The Qatar Grand Prix was a rollercoaster ride of a race, and that was especially true for Red Bull. They had the heady highs of Max Verstappen winning the Drivers' Championship, and then they had Sergio Perez. He was the stomach-in-mouth plummeting low. A couple of weeks ago, we did a video titled "Why Sergio Perez is Perfect for Red Bull," and oh boy, did he prove us wrong. Today we'll talk about Red Bull's biggest problem and why this won't fly next season. Let's get started. If the Qatar Grand Prix is anything to go by, then I expect Formula 1 to introduce maximum stint lengths next season, because the limit on how long drivers could run a tyre made for an action-packed race. Max Verstappen's fastest lap during the race was only 0.4 of a second off his qualifying time. The drivers were pushing like mad all race, which was beautifully highlighted by Lando Norris, saying at the start of his second stint that he has way more pace. And what about George Russell's pace? He was my driver of the day, though Oscar Piastri, making the most of the Mercedes colliding at the start and then driving the best race of his career so far, made him a worthy winner as well. Hamilton turning in on Russell on lap 1 ended Lewis's race and sent George to last place, though a handful of pit stops ahead of him a couple of laps later behind the safety car meant he was actually only 14th of 18 cars when the racing started again. Still, the Mercedes clearly had amazing race pace for George to finish in 4th, just 34 seconds behind Max. Lewis said after the incident on team radio, "I got taken out by my teammate," but after the race he did apologise, taking full responsibility for an incident that was 100% his fault. Lance Stroll had another shocker as well, throwing his steering wheel, pushing his performance coach, and scoring 0 points for the 5th race in a row. It was a bad weekend for teammates across the grid, but perhaps the worst of the lot was once again Sergio Perez. Checo is lucky that Lewis Hamilton ended his own race, otherwise the Drivers' Championship would be looking a lot less favourable. For now, he still holds second place in the Drivers' Championship, but with 5 races left in the season, that position is far from safe. Perez's weekend started how it would carry on. He was knocked out of qualifying in Q2 on Friday after his final flying lap was deleted for a track limits violation. Perez would find himself off track a number of times over the weekend, but his trip to the gravel during the sprint had the biggest effect. When Sergio crashed out of the sprint race, the driver's title was all but guaranteed to go to Verstappen. Max isn't prone to hyperbole, and having secured the title in the sprint race, his summation was indeed a fair assessment of what has been an extraordinary year for the 26-year-old. "I've achieved more than I could ever have dreamed of," he said. "So I am living the moment. It's already way more than I thought I could achieve. It's perfect." Max winning the title highlighted just how bad Checo's weekend was. He has beaten Perez, driving the same car, into a very distant second. The Mexican is now 184 points behind, but Perez has long been out of the championship, repeatedly unable to match Verstappen in qualifying or race pace. Their points hauls during the weekend summed it up perfectly. Checo got 1 point, Max got 33. A couple of weeks ago, we did a video titled "Why Perez is Perfect for Red Bull." We think it might be time to retract that statement. But before we talk about why this race should probably have been the last straw for Red Bull, let's see what the team had to say about Checo's weekend. Like I just said, his trips off the track didn't end in the sprint race. Perez picked up a black and white flag after 3 track limits violations during the Qatar GP, picking up a 5-second time penalty with his 4th transgression. Serving this at his pit stop, he quickly picked up another 5-second time penalty as he exceeded track limits for a 5th time, serving this penalty at his final stop. He would then exceed track limits once again in the closing stages, with this penalty being added to his race time. Having failed to capitalise on Lewis Hamilton's retirement to solidify his second place in the Drivers' Championship, Red Bull team boss Christian Horner didn't mince his words as he spoke to the media afterward. "Checo has had a bit of a shocker of a race," Horner said. "He's had a horrible weekend, the incident yesterday, and then unfortunately the 3 penalties that he got in the race. Without those penalties, when you add 15 seconds to his time, suddenly he's a lot further up the point scoring on a day that Lewis didn't score, so it was a missed opportunity to really try and cement that second place. Those trips off track during the race probably only gained him a 100th of a second of lap time each time he did it. The 15 seconds of penalties he earned for them, though, cost him at least 2 places on track. The 2 stops he made to serve his penalties were far longer than Red Bull would normally do, as the team erred on the side of caution, making sure they didn't touch the car for at least 5 seconds. Without the penalties, Perez would have finished 7th at least. Those 5 points dropped could cost him 2nd in the Drivers' Championship by the end of the season. Christian Horner has for the most part been very supportive of Checo, unlike the other media presence on the Red Bull team, Helmut Marko, whose racist comments a few weeks ago have seen him retreat from the public eye. It seems Red Bull have finally managed to restrain him. After Qatar though, Horner did acknowledge the very obvious issue that Red Bull have. You can see Mercedes have a pair, McLaren have a pair, Ferrari have a pair that are quite tight between the respective drivers. I think we've had that at the earlier point in the year, but as the season has gone on, it's become more variant. We just need to get Checo back to the best form that he's capable of. Horner believes that it is Perez's mental rather than physical condition holding him back presently, although the Mexican is working with a psychological coach. Asked if he was concerned about carrying a mismatched driver pairing into next year, with Perez under contract for 2024, Horner added, "The frustration is that we know what Checo has been capable of. Of course, last year and this year, he's contributed significantly to the Constructors' Championship. We desperately want him to find that form, and as a team, we need him to. We can't afford to have a big split because if, as you would expect, the grid continues to concertina next year, we need both drivers delivering at the top of the game. And this is the issue for Red Bull, and why Qatar may have been the final straw for the team. While Red Bull have utterly dominated both competitions this season, the gap between them and the rest of the teams has started to shrink, as the checkered flag was waved on one of the most challenging races of many of these drivers' careers. Oscar Piastri was just 4.8 seconds behind Max Verstappen. At one point, Max's race engineer actually had to get him to hurry up as they saw McLaren as a threat in the latter stages of the race. That's something that hasn't happened all season. Max has coasted to victory in all but one race since Miami, and I mean coasted. But in Qatar, McLaren showed that they're on their way to challenging Red Bull. The MCL 60, as the McLaren car is known, is capable of challenging Red Bull in qualifying, and at the sand-covered Losail circuit, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris showed that they really aren't that far off in terms of race pace either. It isn't just McLaren that are worried for Red Bull though. Mercedes clearly had a lot of pace as well. McLaren were genuinely worried about George Russell on soft tyres for the final handful of laps, though he never managed to make any dent on the gap to Lando Norris. If Lewis Hamilton hadn't made that move at the start of the race that would have caused Toto Wolff to pull his signature headphone-smashing move, Mercedes may have been able to challenge Max as well. These two teams have managed to develop positively, and assuming they can at least match Red Bull in the off-season, there will be a battle for both championships next season. Let's be clear though, the circumstances did have an effect on the final finishing times. The enforced maximum tyre usage meant that every driver could push far harder in between pit stops. If Red Bull could make use of their tyre-friendly long stints, Max's gap to the cars behind would have been far greater. Nonetheless, this race was the first time that Red Bull have felt threatened all year. If Max had a teammate that was regularly scoring big points, it wouldn't be a problem. But if Checo can't sort himself out and start finishing around the podium as he should be, then Red Bull and Max could find themselves in a serious battle for both championships next season. They cannot afford to keep Sergio Perez around if he's going to cost them a Constructors' Championship. There are 4 races coming up in and around Mexico. Red Bull will want to reap the commercial benefits that Checo offers for those 4 races, but after that, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he finds himself without a race seat in 2024. What did you think of Checo's race? Was this the final straw for him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're down there, give this video a like and subscribe for all the up-to-date F1 news. Until next time, drive safe and bye for now.